Imagine this. The world has gone dark for the night, but a tiny rectangle of light keeps humming in your palm like a caged star. You lie on your back, spine pressed into a mattress that once felt soft, scrolling through a parade of strangers who dance, rant, confess, and disappear in under 60 seconds. A comedian lands a punchline, swipe. A war zone detonates on mute, swipe. A cat falls off a shelf, swipe. Each clip flares and vanishes so quickly that your brain barely registers you've laughed, flinched, pitied, before it's begging for the next sensation. Now pause the feed and listen to the silence that follows. Does it feel like relief or like an itch you can't quite scratch? Why does your thumb hover, twitching, as if it owns the rest of your body? What persuades a perfectly intelligent creature, one who can love, build, suffer, and imagine, to surrender midnight after midnight to a cycle it secretly distrusts? You tell yourself it's harmless entertainment, well-deserved rest, a modern campfire around which millions gather. But if it's rest, why do you wake up more tired? If it's harmless, why does each session end with the faint taste of self-betrayal? Consider a paradox that should unsettle you. Never has humanity been offered more amusements, abundant, personalized, streaming at the speed of a swipe, yet surveys report record levels of boredom, anxiety, and a peculiar kind of emptiness people struggle to name. How can a banquet leave the guests starving? How can a festival of endless choice feel like a prison without visible bars? Perhaps the problem is not that entertainment exists, but that it has mutated from a spice into a staple, from celebration into sedation. When does a pleasant distraction cross the invisible line into a slow extraction of spirit? Ask yourself, what was the last video, meme, reel, or highlight that carved a lasting imprint on your soul? Something you carried into the shower, the commute, the dream? You consumed hours this week alone. Can you summon even 10 meaningful seconds without peeking at your history? If memory is the soil where meaning grows, what sprouts from earth that is forever tilled and never seeded? Maybe the soil turns to dust, incapable of nourishing anything with roots. Another riddle surfaces. Every platform advertises connection, yet each hyper-connected hour often leaves you lonelier than the one before. You laugh with a stranger's skit, but can't recall the timbre of your best friend's voice. You celebrate a streamer's triumph, yet struggle to articulate a single triumph of your own. If community is measured by mutual recognition, what happens when the algorithm knows your cravings better than any living person and still never truly sees you? Tilt the glowing screen for a moment and study the dark glass between reflections. Who looks back at you? Only the weary face you recognize, or something else? Something watching, measuring, training you to respond. Carl Jung warned that whatever you refuse to bring into consciousness will direct your life, and you will call it fate. So what fate is being written in the hours you devote to pixelated noise? Could your late-night, low-energy self, the one who scrolls past the point of joy, be quietly drafting the long chapters of your biography? You might defend yourself. Everyone does it. Life is stressful. I deserve a break. Fair enough. Yet why does the break fracture you further? Why does the sunrise greet you with heavier eyelids, thinner patience, duller appetites for the things that once thrilled you? Why does the harmless ritual look, on second glance, like a sacrament of self-erasure, a daily abrasion against the inner voice that once read books, stared out train windows, invented impossible futures? Hold that discomfort. Let it vibrate against your ribs like an alarm clock no swipe can silence. Because the danger is not merely that endless amusement steals your minutes. The danger is that it apprentices your mind to perpetual distraction, until silence resembles terror and depth feels hostile, and the only reality you can tolerate is the one that disappears before it can demand anything of you. If this prospect chills you even slightly, keep your eyes open. We're about to descend beneath the scroll into the circuitry of craving, where psychology, philosophy, and profit intertwine like cables behind a screen. The glare may be addictive, but understanding its machinery is the first flicker of dawn. Ready? The descent begins now. Picture a dim control room, walls pulsing with server lights and heartbeat graphs. On one screen scrolls your personal feed, an endless ribbon of color and motion. On another flickers a dashboard of neural readouts. Dopamine spikes, limbic flares, micropauses betraying curiosity or disgust. A third monitor shows a live auction of ad impressions, bids rising each time your pupil dilates. You thought you were holding a phone. In truth, the phone is holding court over you. Dopamine, the trickster chemist. Deep in your midbrain sits a lab technician who speaks only in pulses, bursts signaling pay attention, reward ahead. Evolution hired that technician to track ripening fruit and prowling lions. Silicon Valley rents his services by the millisecond. Each swipe is a lever, each unpredictable clip is a fresh lottery ticket. B.F. Skinner found that rats press levers obsessively when rewards arrive at variable intervals. You are the rat with prettier graphics, the lever snug beneath your thumb. Shadow economics, Jung meets Wall Street. Every trait you deny, envy, vanity, voyeurism, sinks into what Carl Jung called the shadow and returns disguised as fate. Platforms monetize that prophecy. Pause on a luxury car reel, and the algorithm senses your secret hunger for status. Hover over a cosmetic ad, and it tastes insecurity beneath nonchalance. The feed spotlights these impulses, packages them, sells them back to you under the halo of personalization. What daylight hides becomes a dataset, and the dataset becomes a shopping list titled You. The hedonic assembly line. Arthur Schopenhauer said life swings between pain and boredom. Engineers realized boredom is predictable and profitable, so they built micro-novelty assembly lines, videos trimmed to 7 clickable seconds, headlines weaponized with emotional adjectives. Stimulation solves boredom while planting the seed of future boredom. The baseline rises, ordinary life feels poorer, you return for another hit. Pleasure morphs into anesthesia, yet the patient keeps demanding stronger doses. Hypernovelty and the scorched palate biologists label supernormal stimuli hypernovelty. Brighter colors, louder sounds, faster cuts than any ancestor faced. A palate trained on fireworks now finds candlelight dull. The scorched palate explains why a book page seems gray, why conversation drifts, why a walk feels unproductive. Silence used to resemble a meadow, now it feels like a void. When hyper-novelty becomes standard, reality appears under-rendered, like a game stuck on low resolution, identity under algorithmic siege. Scrolling is performative self-definition. Each linger, like, share, or skip is a brushstroke the algorithm paints back at you as proof. Watch a trio of conspiracy shorts, and your feed reshapes you into a skeptic. Chase productivity hacks, and it crowns you a hustler. Preference begets prediction, begets narrower preference. Nietzsche's warning echoes, become careful what you pretend to be. You may become it, especially when your performance is measured in micro gestures logged forever. The existential phishing scam. Every notification whispers the same question. Are you available to be influenced? The red dot pulses like a wound begging to be touched. Jean-Paul Sartre said we are condemned to be free. A notification offers parole from that burden. Freedom demands reflection. Reflection requires empty space. Empty space is precisely what the ping erases. The comfort cartel comfort is the cartel's flagship product. Relief from life's friction, delivered in shimmering packets of distraction. Yet comfort turns uncanny, sugar that never converts to blood glucose. A session ends with neither rest nor energy, only a peculiar drainage. That drainage is your attention, siphoned to investors you'll never meet. You trade the possibility of depth for the certainty of diversion, the way a gambler trades savings for another spin of lights and bells. The loss of narrative thread. Meaning depends on narrative stretched across time. It needs yesterday, today, and tomorrow to speak. Clip culture shreds the thread into confetti. You sample 100 beginnings, no middles, endings that vanish before climax. Try recounting your week and you recall highlights without transitions, emotions without context. The self turns to mosaic, each tile too brief to carry identity's weight. The question you keep dodging. Why, despite knowing all this, do you hesitate to delete the apps, silence the feed, sit alone in a quiet room? Perhaps because the gulf between stimulation and stillness feels like death. Perhaps, as Nietzsche noted, people prefer certain suffering to uncertain freedom. Or perhaps the shadow whispers that without the glow you might meet truths still unhouse-trained. Let that unease expand until it touches every corner of your ribcage. Feel the tug-of-war between autonomy and algorithm, between the ancient hunter in your cortex and the neon lure in your pocket. Recognition alone will not save you, but it cracks the glaze of complacency. You have glimpsed the gears. Now you must confront the toll they exact, costs invisible in a single night yet catastrophic across months and years. The tunnel narrows ahead. Psychological scars, social rifts, biological rewiring, each etched by midnight surrendered to the scroll, are waiting in the dark. Keep your phone face down. Keep your pulse steady. The descent continues. Step back from the bright screen into a room with the lights off and notice how your eyes struggle to settle. That restless flicker is the first hint of a deeper tremor, one that starts in neural tissue, spreads through relationships, and eventually unsettles the very architecture of culture. It happens so quietly that you rarely feel the quake until something cracks. Psychic static. Night after night, you pour random noise into the dreaming mind. REM, once a spacious theater for sorting memories and repairing emotions, must now sweep confetti before it can begin the play. The sweep runs out of time. You wake foggy, draw a blank on a friend's birthday, shrug at news that might have outraged you last year. The mind protects itself by dulling sensation, numbness disguised as coping. Once, vivid recollection made life feel textured. Now the surface is sanded smooth, less painful, but also less alive. Atrophied attention conversation used to be a dance, missteps, pauses, recoveries, applause. Replace it with friction-free feeds and the muscles of dialogue shrink. At lunch, your gaze drifts to the phone. You have, without noticing, trained yourself to tolerate only the stimulus that takes zero effort to receive. The friend across the table feels uninteresting, but the deficiency lives not in them. It lives in a span of focus that can no longer bench press a single anecdote. Loneliness grows in that gap, yet the fix you reach for, more scrolling, deepens the weakness. When attention dies, intimacy starves. When intimacy starves, meaning emaciates, political vaudeville. A society raised on bite-sized spectacle has no patience for the slow machinery of democracy. Policy debates are eclipsed by outraged thumbnails, each calibrated to keep you riveted for precisely long enough to sell an ad. Shock becomes background noise. Politicians learn that performance outperforms substance, so theatrics replace governance. By the time a decision empties your wallet or floods your basement, you realize you memorized slogans, not solutions. The republic hasn't collapsed, it has been traded for a circus whose ringmaster is the algorithmic market share. Circadian sabotage. Blue light at midnight dampens melatonin, pushes REM toward dawn, and cues cortisol to arrive jet-lagged. Morning coffee props you up, afternoon sugar spikes you again, evening wine drags you low, the phone glow restarts the loop. Doctors label the symptoms, metabolic syndrome, adrenal fatigue, yet seldom trace the taproot back to the device that stole darkness from your bedroom ceiling. Fatigue becomes a lifestyle, and the hustle culture memes urge you to treat exhaustion as normal. You obey because the memes arrive exactly when willpower collapses. The illusion of learning edutainment feels empowering. A 60-second summary of Kierkegaard, a carousel thread on quantum gravity. The serotonin pop whispers, "I'm growing." But true learning is slow fermentation, arguing with ambiguity, returning to the same paragraph until its bones appear. Scroll culture substitutes familiarity for mastery. You pile up fragments and call it a library. Then a real-world puzzle demands layered understanding, and you discover your shelves hold only dust jackets. Confidence collapses into quiet panic. The scroll offers fast relief, and the cycle repeats. The meaning recession. Nietzsche once worried that God was dead. Today the issue is that boredom has been murdered too. With no quiet to incubate purpose, meaning must fight for oxygen against a blizzard of clips. On trains and elevators, people surface from their timelines like divers from anesthesia, blinking at time lost without memory. A coherent life story requires a through line, but the feed teaches you to live in montage. The blank moments, once a garden where questions germinated, feel unbearable now, so nothing germinates. You are left with activity swelling, purpose shrinking. Generational feedback. Children learn attention by watching adults allocate theirs. A parent dissolving nightly into a tablet teaches that solitude equals screen time, not play, not wonder, not boredom's productive darkness. Classrooms inherit the consequences. Teachers battle dopamine expectations so high that textbooks feel like dial-up internet. Employers call these kids lazy, ignoring that their neural circuitry has been calibrated for stimulus velocity the real world rarely matches. Culture's gears begin to strip. Progress stalls on tasks that require patience no one has practiced. Spiritual tinnitus. Every tradition that seeks depth, prayer, meditation, art, relies on stillness wide enough for the sacred to echo. Constant inputs hiss across that frequency, a spiritual tinnitus that never quiets. You may not label yourself religious, yet you still need awe. Awe recalibrates the self within a larger frame, mountains, symphonies, another person's unguarded eyes. When inner bandwidth is jammed by trivia, awe knocks all day, yet cannot be heard. The result is a subtle claustrophobia. Even a spacious sky feels low. Agency erosion. Selfhood is sculpted by choices. Endless micro-choices degrade the chisel to dust. Swipe logic teaches reaction before reflection, and after enough repetitions, reflection retires. You sense life happening to you. Opportunities drift past. Book unwritten, friendship undialed, guitar gathering dust. Each casualty stamped too late. In quiet hours you ask, did I choose any of this? The answer returns thin as a notification ping. Maybe you never chose, only clicked. A loop that feeds itself. Foggy minds crave easy hits. Weak relationships funnel you toward parasocial intimacy. Political theatrics drive more engagement. Metabolic crashes beg for late-night comfort. Every consequence above becomes fuel for the next binge. The loop tightens until fish forget they swim in water. Yet hairline cracks appear. A weekly screen time report. A strangely alien face in the mirror. Silence that makes your skin itch. These fissures can be sealed by another scroll, or pried wider into windows. Let that recognition vibrate a moment longer. The fallout isn't a future dystopia. It is already etched in your sleep debt, your shortening sentences, your fading tolerance for silence. Panic won't save you, denial will drown you, but dread can be alchemized into resolve. Somewhere ahead there is a latch, and hands trained to swipe can learn to lever. If the thought of lifting that lever sparks even the faintest pulse, keep that ember alive. The next passage will sketch rebellious moves, strategies stolen from philosophers, monks, and renegade coders who learned to turn attention from prey into compass. The cage is elegant, but elegance is not the same as inevitability. The path to the latch begins with a single refusal to swipe. Breathe in. Feel how the lungs ache for something unprocessed, something that can't be consumed at 2 times speed. That faint ache is your first ally. It means a deeper metabolism of attention is still possible. A cage, no matter how seamless, must hinge somewhere. The art of rebellion starts by locating that hinge and prying, slowly, deliberately, without waiting for permission. Expose the ritual. Choose one night and treat the scroll like a scientific specimen instead of a reflex. Prop your phone against a mug, hit record on its front camera, and let it film you while you scroll. Later, ideally the following morning when the chemical fog has cleared, watch your own face. Observe the micro grimaces, the slack jaw, the twitch of anxiety when the feed stalls. You aren't shaming yourself. You're gathering data. The shadow cannot govern what the conscious mind has documented. Friedrich Nietzsche kept meticulous notes on his moods to tame them. You are simply extending that practice to your digital trance. Reclaim the boredom muscle. Boredom is not the enemy. It is a dormant faculty that once pushed explorers over mountains and monks into revelation. Start with 5 minutes of deliberate nothing each day. No podcasts, no background music, no mental agendas. Just sit and count the urges to escape. At first, they stampede. Keep counting. Around urge 30-something, a curious stillness appears. You begin to hear a quieter frequency, stray memories, half-formed ideas, undigested emotions. That shy signal is the pre-digital self, and it grows louder each time you resist the itch. Kierkegaard called boredom the root of all evil, but also the precondition for creation. He understood it as threshold, not obstacle. Carve 1. Chunk of Kairos Chronos is clock time. Kairos is felt time, those hours when the mind locks onto a task so fully that seconds lose meaning. Pick a pursuit that does not end in likes or shares. Woodworking, watercolor, long-form coding, planting a tomato. Block 90 uninterrupted minutes. Protect them as you would a newborn. Silence notifications, hide devices, request solitude. The first attempts will feel awkward, as if your focus were a rusted hinge. Keep oiling. Neuroscientist Andrew Huberman notes that sustained attention resensitizes dopamine receptors flattened by micro-hits. Kairos is the antidote to the hedonic assembly line. 1 deep hour will feed you more than 100 shallow ones. Replace the infinite with the finite. The brain cannot negotiate infinity. It needs edges. Delete apps that have no natural endpoint and replace them with media that finish. A vinyl album, a single-player game, a physical magazine. When something ends, it gifts you a sober aftertaste, a moment to ask, do I want another or something different? Monks chant psalms for precisely this reason. The cadence ends, inviting reflection before repetition. Make peace with the awkward void that follows an ending. That void is fertile ground where hunger can mature into intention instead of compulsion. Draft an attention charter. Write in ink the principles that will govern your digital life, not rules handed down by gurus, but values you articulate. I will answer messages twice a day with full presence. I will treat YouTube as a library, not a conveyor belt. I will never enter the bedroom with a glowing screen after 10 p.m. Post the charter where you charge your devices. The act feels performative, and that's the point. Performance precedes identity. Repeated vows harden into muscle memory. Stoic Emperor Marcus Aurelius journaled his meditations to remind himself how to rule his own mind before ruling an empire. Your charter is a micro-empire of neural territory reclaimed. Recruit friction algorithms thrive on zero friction. Introduce obstacles like greased bearings turned gritty. Sign out after every session. Delete saved passwords. Keep devices from autoplaying. Add a 20-second delay app that forces you to breathe each time you open social media. 20 seconds is just long enough for the reflective prefrontal cortex to overrule the primal midbrain. In behavioral psychology, this is called a commitment device. Odysseus lashed himself to a mast to hear sirens without crashing. Your password hurdle is the digital rope. Seek analog witnesses. Find people willing to inhabit unfiltered time with you. Book clubs that actually read the book, running partners who leave phones at home, friends who cook from scratch while music hums from a real speaker, not earbuds. Shared analog experiences amplify accountability. A single evening of uninterrupted dinner conversation can recalibrate your dopamine baseline more effectively than any mindfulness app. Thoreau withdrew to Walden Pond alone. You may need a small pod of co-conspirators because the algorithm is nothing if not social. Transmute shadow into signal. The impulses you feed in secret hold energy that can be redirected. Jealousy can become ambition. Voyeurism can become curiosity. Vanity can become aesthetics. The next time envy flares while scrolling someone's highlight reel, do not swipe it away. Interrogate it. What unlived capacity in me does this envy reveal? Then schedule one concrete action that moves your life an inch toward that capacity. Write a paragraph, sketch a design, send a pitch. Jung insisted the shadow contains gold. Mining it demands courage, not condemnation. Let these practices coalesce into rhythm. Rebellion is not a single defiant gesture but a choreography of micro-choices, repeated until they imprint the nervous system. There will be relapses, nights when fatigue drives you back into the glowing cave. Forgive, note the trigger, reset the charter. Progress is measured in reclaimed mornings, conversations that stretch past dessert, ideas that survive beyond a swipe. Feel for a moment the texture of your own agency returning, proof that the loop can be bent. Yet agency is only the first stage. Beyond the cage lies a wider terrain where attention is not merely defended but wielded like a blade. To cross into that landscape, you must grasp a final, unsettling truth that reframes what entertainment is and what your soul is for. Ready to walk through that last gate, hold the handle. The hinges are about to turn. Open the gate. Ahead stretches a vast plain under early dawn light. No feeds, no pings, only the hush that follows a storm. You step onto the grass and discover the strangest sensation. Nothing is demanding your eyes. The silence feels almost aggressive, like a question pressed against your chest. If no screen defines you, who are you right now, in this uncurated air? You inhale, expecting the usual chorus of cravings, yet something else surfaces, an older, steadier pulse that once guided childhood afternoons before algorithms arrived. It is the pulse of intrinsic curiosity, the drive that makes a child dismantle a toy just to glimpse the mystery inside. You realize with a jolt that this impulse never died. It was merely muffled under a waterfall of artificial astonishment. Here is the ultimate truth. Simple, devastating, liberating. Entertainment is a tool you were meant to wield, yet somewhere along the timeline, it learned to wield you. The brightest engineers in history have spent unlimited capital perfecting one trick, converting your agency into their predictability. They did not steal your freedom. They invited you to pawn it, micro-choice by micro-choice, until the receipt pile looked like fate. The platforms are not villains, merely mirrors, exquisite, seductive mirrors that grow stronger each time you forget they are reflections. So the real contest was never between you and the phone. It was between two selves inside you, the consumer who waits to be pleased and the creator who aches to shape reality. One accepts loops, the other carves lines that arc into stories. Every swipe is a vote in that election. The feed wants your creator to retire early, but the creator is stubborn, and tonight you have given it a new set of tools. Look backward. You have already exposed rituals, rebuilt boredom, scheduled Kairos, forged an attention charter, recruited friction, gathered analog witnesses, and mined the shadow for gold. Each act pushed the cage door wider. Now the plane of authorship lies open, and the next move is yours alone. Creation does not have to mean painting cathedrals or launching companies. It can be as small as a handwritten letter, as steady as tending a balcony herb, as fierce as listening, truly listening, to someone's pain without reaching for your pocket. Creation is any gesture that adds coherence to the world instead of consuming coherence others prepared. You wonder, will the old cravings disappear? Unlikely. The algorithm is immortal in corporate servers, and your synapses remember the thrill. But cravings are only tyrants when unchallenged. Once named, they become messengers carrying news of unattended needs: rest, novelty, validation, communion. Meet the need at its source and the craving shrinks to a whisper. Ignore it long enough and it shouts. Negotiate and it joins your council like a once rebellious city now pledged to the republic. In this republic of the self, attention is currency, and you, finally, are the treasurer. Spend it on marvels that reciprocate, pages that deepen with each reread, skills that mature like wine, relationships that reflect a face more detailed than any selfie can reveal. Spend it on stillness too, because stillness is not inert. It is the slow compost where insight germinates. Silence is the canvas that lets a single note shatter you, that lets the morning sun feel like a revelation instead of background noise. Picture your future autobiographer, perhaps your older self, perhaps a grandchild, flipping through the record of a life. Will the pages crackle with first-hand discoveries and full-bodied days, or will they blur into timestamps of someone else's highlights you witnessed through glass? You already know the answer. It hovers like a cursor in the blank document of tomorrow. All that remains is to type. Yet a whisper intrudes. What if I relapse? Accept that you will. Relapse is not failure. It is feedback. Each unintended binge is a diagnostic report pinpointing vulnerabilities in your system. Examine the report with the calm of a scientist, patch the gap, return to the field. Progress is jagged, but jagged still climbs. Another whisper. What if my friends remain lost in the feed? Love them where they are. Beacon them by example. Human attention is contagious. Sit across from someone, phone face down, and they will feel the pull of genuine presence like sunlight through a cloudy window. Some will squint and reach for shade. Others will step closer to the warmth. You are not responsible for their path, but you can clear yours so it gleams like permission. The sky on the plain brightens. You check the horizon and realize, as you always do in moments of honest wakefulness, time is not a resource but a direction. It moves one way only, and you, unique among atoms, carry the privilege of steering within it. Every minute surrendered to hollow spectacle is not merely lost, it is reversed, used to carve channels that funnel the next minute toward the same drain. But every minute exercised in authorship multiplies, because creation begets possibility, and possibility folds time forward. Breathe again. Feel gravity redistribute across spine and shoulders. That weight is responsibility re-entering the body, and it is heavy only if you try to bear it without purpose. With purpose, it steadies you like ballast, allowing the mind to sail without capsizing into storms of triviality. Purpose is not found, it is forged, hammered from the raw ore of attention and time. The phone in your pocket buzzes, battery low perhaps. You smile. For once, the device demands your attention for something trivial rather than you begging it for diversion. You power it down, not forever, just long enough to remind it who holds the switch. The screen dims to a mirror, reflecting a face alert, somewhat uncertain, yet luminous with unclaimed mornings. A final question hangs, gentle but firm. Now that the loop is broken and the plane lies open, what story will you write before the light fades again? Answer it not with words, but with the next deliberate act, because the soul, long numbed by passive glow, is ready to remember how fiercely it can burn.